Okay, so I must admit something. I'm a lazy guy, and I thought that when I have a talk on the second day of the conference in the afternoon, nobody will come. So you spoiled it, and I have to have a talk. Um, so I have to use the second strategy, like to avoid my talk. I just will present you so much data and charts so that you will leave. Because I'm just the data guy. I'm like very enthusiastic about it. So you have your last chance to leave now, for I will bore you to death. Okay, thank you. uh, okay. Okay, you asked for it. Okay, so I came from SolarWinds. So what do you think SolarWinds is doing as a company? Solar, solar power plants and wind power plants. Yes, no. Actually, we are purely software company, and we do a network monitoring software. Uh, the reason why the company is called SolarWinds is a long story, just for the evening, maybe for the beer. So I will not go for it, and I will talk about the challenges and successes with synchronizing many teams on one product. And this product we do is called Orion, and it's really, as I said, network monitoring software. So an IT guy who like sits in his cubicle the whole day and manages a network of 100, 200, 10,000 computers, just needs to know like what's happening in his network. Yeah, so he has our software installed there, and he has a console where he can see this node is up, this node is down, there is a problem with the interface traffic, and so on. He can solve the problems before the angry users call him. Yeah. But this is not talk about the product, this is talk more about the process and how we do software development. So just some context about how the software development look like. The Orion family, so-called, consists of multiple products, which like the company is very enthusiastic about 3-letter abbreviations. So the products are called NPM, NCM, NTA, SAM, whatever. And all of these products use the common core, yeah, the common platform, so to say. Now, this is a less talk as it was the previous one. So, and the less promotes to have a very broad definition of product. In our case, but also says that the product definition should be as practical as possible. Yeah. So in our case, we have decided that our product is what we call core, which is the basis of all the other which we call modules for the which serve the real customers. Yeah. The teams are located in multiple states: Czech Republic mostly, and then Ukraine, Lviv, and Poland, and many stakeholders are in US. Yeah. And we have gone through the last transformation partly, and the current setup is resembling less huge with some minor differences. So I will use less terminology here. So we have 14 Scrum teams, and as Wolfgang said, it's not always practical to have like up to 8 Scrum teams for one product owner, because when you are inexperienced, it's better to start small. So that's what we did. So our requirement areas, which we call pillars, have 3 to 5 Scrum teams. But they are defined customer focused. Yeah. So, for example, one of the areas is called deployment, and it's meant for customers who install the product and set it up. Yeah. So, like the teams take care of everything that it's from the beginning of downloading the product till the website goes up. Yeah. So everything which is there, and in a similar way, the other requirement areas are defined. We have one product owner per area, and we have, like, it is not by the book of the last, we have like product managers, which there should be only one guy, but again, for practical reasons, we have 3 guys. One of them is dominant, and they serve as kind of like overall product owner in less. So we are in the middle of this, and I'll tell you 3 experiments which we did and which went pretty successfully, and then one area where we still struggle and don't know how to do this. The company is focused on return, like the market for IT professionals, and the nature of the business tells that we have to make some buzz on social networks. Yeah, because when we release a new product and we have a very good marketing department, which then like send all those stories to Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, wherever, and it makes a buzz, and people start talking about us, and like online newspapers like Wired start to publish reviews, and simply the sales go up. Yeah, and the data tells us that it happens, like it is very good when we do it every 6 months. So that's the reason why our release cycle is 6 months long. And although I would love to see like more delivery after each sprint, this marketing campaign cannot happen after each sprint. So we have to have something big each 6 months and consistent, and do this marketing campaign about it. So a certain level of planning is needed. So I invented a new meeting, like from time to time, like people cannot call themselves manager when they do not invent a meeting. So I invented a new meeting, which I call Planning Zero. I did it on purpose because I wanted to avoid what happened before. Like you can imagine then in a structure like this, when you have many users of this product, like internal users, we have also many stakeholders. And these stakeholders, well, they don't care about the others. They just come to us and say, hey, like deliver this and deliver that. Yeah. And what we need to do is to prioritize all those requests, and stakeholders like tend to fight against each other. So because they say, I don't care about the other's request, I just want mine. And sometimes they were even like calculating. They said, oh, I would love to have this feature, but I think he will need it more. So I will let him ask for it, and I will ask for something else. So I wanted to do it in a more collaborative way, and was inspired by innovation games. Anybody knows innovation games? Yeah. So buy a feature game. Anybody knows buy a feature? Yeah. Okay. So I will explain how it works. Let's imagine we have 3 stakeholders, Jeff, Tom, and Kate, and they have some wish list. Like whoever can come to us and say, hey, I want this feature, and we just list all those features in a list. Then we somehow estimate how big these features are, and I will come to it later. How do we estimate this quickly? And then we allocate budgets to each stakeholder and tell them, hey, Jeff, you have 60 points, Tom, you have 20 points, and Kate, you have 20 points. Yeah. And then they start, you put them in one meeting room, or virtual meeting room in our case, and they will start buying the features. They will start investing their budgets. Yeah. And they can decide to buy just one feature, which makes sense in case of Kate or Tom because they have not too much money. Or they can decide to split that, which makes sense in case of Jeff because he has a lot of money, so they can afford buying more. And at the end of the session, it probably ends something like this. Yeah. So Kate has decided to buy this feature, and this is fully financed, so it will be developed. Then these features have been partly invested, but not fully. So this means we cannot afford doing them, and it's transparently visible. And then the great things happened with feature A, where Jeff and Tom like put their money together, and they bought a feature they could not afford buying otherwise. Yeah. So this feature will be financed from both of them. So that was the idea. and we went through it with the 4 stakeholders we have. We identified that we have as our key stakeholders PMs, architecture, then the engineering themselves, and support. And what I did is that I talked to each of them and explained them like how the process is going to work. Then I took a calculator and started calculating like what shall be the budget. So how I took some historical data and extrapolated it to the current release and to this number of 14 Scrum teams. And then I said, okay, Jeff, you have so many points, and Tom, you have so many points. And we also did a couple of simulations. Like we had some virtual wish list, and we did this simulation in one room locally, so that we could find some flaws in the process. And then off we went for the first session. So as a preparation, we had this wish list available with estimates, budget allocated, and the idea was that we will go through the features one by one with some short introduction, so that the stakeholders know like what they buy, and they will spend the budget, and we will then prioritize it and distribute the features to pillars. So yeah, so how do you think it worked for the first time? Any idea? No, actually it was not that bad. Yeah, but we realized some learnings from that. The good thing was that the stakeholders really collaborated and then they spent their money. But we realized that for the first time, 1 hour, which we have reserved, is not enough because we wanted to go through all the features, and then we had too little time for this actual buying. Yeah. So it was not enough. So next time I would reserve more. We also realized that it's good to have, for some features, like multiple variants. Like one feature, for example, could be implemented like locally by our development teams, or we could buy a third-party component, and then the feature is cheaper, but it has some other costs. So it also allows for this kind of things. Yeah, we learned not to use a Confluence table because it was really shitty how it doesn't calculate the sums. Yeah, so we use something different next time. And we also learned that some items were too little. Like some stakeholders misunderstood the game and just gave us as wish list like items that could be implemented in 1 or 2 days, which like is nothing when you think about half a year release with 14 teams. Yeah. And finally, we learned that it's very good if stakeholders are synchronized in advance, because it happened that we have multiple architects and we have multiple engineering representatives, and they kind of argued in front of each other, like directly in the meeting, and didn't give a good impression. So they kind of learned from it, and in further sessions, that was much better. We had, I think, 4 sessions right now, and the release is almost ending. So these dynamics continued, and we have seen a lot of collaboration. They like even bought features from the other stakeholders that was even not from their wish lists. And the result is very transparent. This is included in the release. This is not included in the release. This is the most important stuff. This is not included. You cannot expect this. Yeah. Of course, even if marketing wants us to live in this kind of waterfallish environment where we predict in advance what we deliver in half a year, of course, new features appeared in the middle, yeah, as it always happens. And this allowed us, with further sessions, allowed us to say, okay, you can buy this new feature, and then it means that you will not finance the other feature. It will go out. Yeah. What we found difficult, of course, estimates were updated, because they were just estimates, so it turned out that something is more difficult than we expected to, and something is even less difficult. What we found particularly difficult is prioritization, because when the stakeholders just buy some stuff, they expect everything will be done, and they kind of do not think about what is more anymore. What is more important than anything else? Yeah, so they kind of assume that everything that has been bought is priority number one for us. Yeah, which is not the case, and this is one of the challenges we have to improve in the next releases. Yeah. So this was planning 0, and it was pretty successful, and we will definitely repeat this exercise in the next release. Now to the point of coming into the estimates, because yeah, estimates are sometimes necessary evil you have to do, and in this bio-feature game you have to do it. But I personally hate estimates because they are most of the time just guesses. So how did we deal with that? So first we had this wish list, yeah, and this wish list was a long list of items. Then we let the teams do some research in each item, and we told them, hey, please don't spend more than 1 or 2 days by it. It doesn't make any sense. You just need to know enough to tell us to have a feeling about this. And some teams spend this 1 or 2 days. Some teams tend to spend 2 weeks, and then we had to stop them. Sometimes they even come with some absolute number, like it will take 5 sprints. But we kind of like we took those numbers as hints, but as a cross-check, we organized a session. And again, in our case, everything is multi-site, so you have to use electronic tools. Yeah. So we use Trello in this case, if you are familiar with Trello. Yeah. And we use the affinity grouping method. Anybody familiar with that? Okay. Okay. So this is the wish list. Yeah. This is the wish list, and we prepared the board with columns, and the columns say XS, S, M, L, XL, just symbolic labels of it. And what is important, it consists some features from the last release, because from the last release we had historical data. We knew how big those features were, so we could put them into the appropriate column. Yeah. And then we organized a meeting with the team representatives. There was like one representative from each team, and we asked them, hey, just put the items to the columns, yeah, to the appropriate column. Is it smaller than this feature you know and you worked on in the last release, or is it about the same size, or is it bigger? Yeah. And this session, for those who use the method, like this is really fast method. It's like for about 1 hour, you can go through the list of 30, 50 items, yeah, because you just need very quick thinking about it to compare this. And usually it ends up as something like this, like as a bell curve distribution with very few items here, a lot of items here, and very few items there. And the beauty of it is that immediately you have your estimate, because you have these old features, and you know this old feature, centralized settings, in the case, it took about 60 something. I'm just going to tell you what this something is. You can say, okay, then Excel column is about 50, yeah, and you can do the same thing for all the other columns. When something ends up in the column in the right, it also gives you a hint that maybe the feature is not well defined, and maybe it's worth spending another 2 days or another 2 weeks researching and maybe splitting into smaller features. So in 1 hour, you have very good information about the features and enough input for this planning 0 session. Yeah. And now, like, what do these numbers actually mean? Well, in our case, it's just the number of backlog items, expected number of backlog items. Of course, at the beginning, in this phase, we don't know like how many of them will be, but we expect it will have 100, or in this case, 25 stories, bugs, whatever. And in a way, we use the no estimates technique. Like, if you are familiar with that, anybody familiar? Yes, okay, some people are. So we don't use any story points anymore for about 3 or 4 years. And why we can afford this? Because when we use story points, like this 3 years ago, I've made an analysis of the backlog because everything was in Jira, so it was readily available. And I realized that when I look at the backlog, then most stories, anyway, they have one story point. Yeah, it's the majority of it. And the median of it is 3 story points. Like so, and there is very few stories with 8 story points or more. So it turned out that all our backlog items are pretty small, and it's consistent. And then I wanted to compare, like when I will stop using story points and I will just start counting items, how will our burndown chart look like? And it turned out, like the blue one is the burndown chart with story points. First, we just adding items to backlog, and then we start burning down when the restart. And the red one, the red one is story points, and the blue one is number of items. Yeah, and they're all the same. Yeah, so why to bother? Why to bother estimating when you don't need that? We can just count items, and you can have the same predictive power from this. Yeah. So to sum up for the estimates, you can estimate features in an you have to invest these 1 or 2 days of research for each item, of course, to understand it. Then you can have 1 hour session to distribute these epics into the column, and you can just count items. You don't need to estimate story points, and then you can plan your release. Okay, so now we go to the level of sprint planning, and now I will again use more of a less tech terminology. So now we have our features, we have decided what to do, and now each pillar constitutes a requirement area, so they have one sprint planning meeting. And on this sprint planning meeting, the teams decide that which team will do what feature. Yeah. We don't prescribe it to the pillars, so every pillar does it a little bit differently. So what I will show you here is just an example from one pillar. What we do is to have one product owner who prepares the list of backlog items. He puts them on a Confluence page, and there's a table with teams. This is a pillar with 3 teams, and the teams can voluntarily subscribe for the stories, in this case, for the stories they want to implement. This is kind of a preparation for the planning. Sometimes it happens that nobody wants item number 2. Sometimes it happens that 2 teams want that, but they can resolve it because they can see it before. Sorry, this is my phone. Okay. But it's all very transparent. And when it comes to sprint planning, then everybody knows what will be in the backlog. The sprint planning is attended by the team representatives, 1 or 2 from each team. It depends on the team. And we do, again, multi-site setup. So we have to use electronic tools. And in this case, we decided to use Google Doc. And we prepare a Google Doc. And this is kind of an older example of planning with 5 teams. But the gist of it is still the same. So we have a Google Doc because it supports collaboration. Multiple people can write there at the same time. And we have a separate section for each team. Like the teams have names. In our case, names, they are usually named by some famous personalities. So this is the section of a team. Here is the section for the product backlog, where a product owner at the time of the planning copies some items to the backlogs and teams take them. We have also a section with some general info where we place things like sprint goals and maybe some public holidays information, something important that it's worth knowing at the time of the sprint. And we have also some rotating roles. We have always a team that takes care of the build because it's a big product. We want to produce one build, so we rotate this. And then the planning itself is very short because of this preparation here and because of this collaborative nature. And I will now show you how a planning looks like. So the sheet is ready for planning, general info is ready, and in a while, product owner will copy the first batch of the requirements, and the teams themselves in parallel start taking that and copying that into their sections above. He doesn't. He just copied their top of the backlog. So for now, the first top of the backlog is distributed to the teams, and we can see that each team has 1 or 2 items. So now product owner copies the middle part of the backlog, yeah? And the teams again distribute it. You know, like, let's finish the video and we can discuss. Yeah. So. Yeah, planning for 5 teams in parallel in this case. Yeah. Within one pillar, yes, that's the point. Well, they are of course, but we try to reduce them. Yeah. Yeah. So now the product owner has pasted the rest of the backlog, and he kind of counts that not all of these items will be taken, but he doesn't care too much because like the top of the backlog has been taken. Yeah. So. That's product owner. It was just a prioritization. This grouping was like product owner's job. I say, hey, this is for RC2. We have to do it first, and then we can do the rest. Yeah. Yeah. So if you can see that teams are full. I think now we have improved that the teams indicate that by marking themselves as full directly in the sheet. So this after the planning, this is taken and sent in an email to the teams, and I will show you in a while how does the email look like. Yeah, and this is actually the input for the teams themselves for the sprint planning too. So now they take these items and create sprint backlog and tasks and so on. Yeah. So this is how the email looks like. Okay, questions. Like I've seen that many questions raised.
How teams planning their capacity? It's from the side they like just putting on the task and the weekend.
Yeah. So they had this preparation. They have seen the items before, and they kind of knew that like what they would take. But it's up to them. Like they usually they know that they can do 6 to 10 items in a sprint. So they take 6 to 10 items in a sprint and take into account the vacations and how difficult the items are and what experience they have with them, and it's just up to them. Yeah. Yeah.
Quick question. I see that you said the integration team who will be responsible for a build.
Mm-hmm.
Is it on rotation basis or?
Yeah, it's rotational. Yeah, so as I said at the beginning, we have four pillars, yeah, and each pillar has one product owner, and this was planning of one pillar. So there's one product owner who brings the prioritized backlog, and these 5 teams just take items from the backlog.
How many times on this plane? So
Yeah,
somebody can take feature, decide that it's too big
mm-hmm.
for them and put it back.
Yeah. Yeah. So again, we have this Confluence page with preparation, so they can think it through. But sometimes it happens, of course, there is a new last-minute item. The video was a little bit shortened, but not too much. Like we usually need about half an hour for this sprint planning ceremony, including the introduction and saying like the context of the sprint. And this taking of the items takes about 15 minutes, not more. Yeah, there is a WebEx session, and they can communicate via voice, of course, and via video. But at the same time, they can use this Google Sheet. Yes, and it happens that if there are, for instance, two stories that are somehow interconnected, that one team takes them, typically not two teams, so to reduce dependencies, and they can also discuss. It also happens from time to time that nobody wants an item. In this case, we have a virtual dice. Yeah, we just throw the dice and say, hey, team number 2 takes it, and that's it. Yeah. Yeah. You mean yeah, so we go. You mean after the teams take it? So they have still this sprint planning 2, and after this sprint planning 2, they can. This is the first checkpoint. They can come back and say, "Hey, we have thought about it once again, and we kind of realize that we cannot do this." Yeah, and this is fine because we have just distributed the items from the top, and typically these top items go through different teams. So if they decide to not to implement 2 items on the bottom, it's fine because they are most likely from the bottom of the backlog. Yeah. Yeah, they just return it back to the backlog, and of course it can happen in the middle of the sprint that they realize that this was too much. Then they go back to product owner and tell him so. Yeah. Yeah. So we don't have a form delivered to customers. We are not that far yet, but we definitely have a common build which includes those features. Like and it's typically delivered to the modules like the other products which I've shown on top.
How often teams revision their backlogs, like you said previously, and
Mhm.
taking away some tasks?
Typically at the end of the sprint, like say 2 or 3 days before the end of the sprint, they realize, oh, maybe we'll not finish that, so we will go to product owner so that he can plan it to the next sprint, for example. Yeah.
It's kind of always or simultaneously every different time.
Like every team does it in a different day or different time. But I mean, what do you mean?
Like it take place from sprint to sprint, or
Yes,
it's so all the sprints have some tasks that they should drop.
that happens. To be honest, yes. Length of the sprint. We have just chosen 2 weeks, and we have no reason to doubt it. Like, but I think it could work with any other lengths. Yeah. Okay. I can answer more questions to this after my talk, but I would like to finish. So how much time do I have? Is that timekeeper? Okay. Okay, so that was the positive stuff that we were pretty successful with. So to be fair, I would like to tell you something about what we are still not satisfied with, and this is the tracking. Yeah. At the beginning, the stakeholders buy features, and they just want to know in the middle, like how far we are with that, or we need to know in the middle how far we are. So we did a couple of experiments. I will show you something. We have not been successful with any of them so far. So the first thing, Burndown chart, right? Pretty much, yeah. But when you look at the Burndown chart, it usually looks like this, yeah. It just goes ups and down, and you don't know anything from that because you don't know whether it's because you do not burn stuff or whether there's new stuff arising. So, okay, if not Burndown chart, you can use Burnup chart, yeah, because that has this nice feature that you can see both. You can see how many stuff you have burned down and how many new stuff appeared. Yeah. So we have used also. I skip this because I don't have too much time. This Burnup chart is a little bit better because you see, okay, I'm burning stuff, but at the same time, this is this red curve. At the same time, a new stuff is appearing in my backlog, which is actually good because you discover new stuff and you don't want to know all the stuff in advance anyway, and you can react on feedback. a bug, but it doesn't help stakeholders too much because what they want to know is that where are my features? Well, not where are all the features, but where are my features? Yeah. So another experiment we tried was to categorize the stuff in the backlog to say, hey, this is for architecture, this is for the product management, the blue one, the green one is for engineering, and there's something for support, which is not visible in this chart. Well, it works a little bit better, at least as a statistics for the whole release. There is some manual work to calculate it, but okay, we could survive this. But the problem is it still doesn't answer the questions, where are my features? Like, what is with my one specific feature? Yeah. So we also try to create tables like this. Yeah, there is a feature one, and it's in progress, like with 20 stories done and 5 still remaining, and there is a feature two, and so on. Again, you can imagine a hell of manual work for like 50 features like this. Yeah. So it works a bit, but again, even this number doesn't tell if you have 2 items closed and 1 open. It doesn't tell you how far you are because there could be like 10 undiscovered stories. Yeah, so you don't know. So then we experimented with Then we experimented with a two-dimensional view. Yeah, like kind of inspired by a story mapping, but it's not story mapping because it's something different. This is just a two-dimensional view of the backlog, saying, hey, this is what we will do, and this is what is out of scope. And here we just go down and say, hey, this is what we will do, and what is down there is out of scope. Again, a lot of manual work. Don't try it because it might work for certain scope of like, let's say, tens of backlog items, but once you have to deal with hundreds of backlog items, it's simply too much work. So one of our engineering managers who misses coding a lot because he is our manager, he was so desperate that he programmed a homemade tool which kind of does the same thing, right? So he reads data from Jira and displays that in this nice two-dimensional metrics. It's so far the best what we have, and we at least eliminated the manual work, but still we haven't eliminated the problem of scaling that to a sufficient level, because if you have 30 features and each feature has like, I don't know, 20, 25 stories, you just cannot fit it in one screen. Yeah. So that's still something which we play with and looking for experiments how to improve that. And maybe when we meet next year, I will tell you how far we got. Yeah. So for today, I would like to sum up. Planning Zero using bi-feature game definitely improves collaboration, although it generates some peak of work at the beginning, and this peak can be made small by just constraining the time spent to it. You don't need story points for estimates, and I would never return to story points, honestly, after this experience. Shared Google Doc for sprint planning, for pillars, it's a great experience. Try it. We still don't know how to track features, but maybe we'll figure out. Yeah. That's me. If you want to contact me, LinkedIn, Twitter, wherever. And thank you. I think we have time for questions. Yeah, should have 5 minutes for questions, if they are. Or you were exhausted by the previous set of questions. Hmm? So typically stakeholders come from the other parts of the organization. A major stakeholder is a product management who defines like the vision of the product and the strategy. He comes with a lot of features like saying, hey, we are going to support this kind of like device, the new device we want to monitor. a very good stakeholder, very important stakeholder is support, for example, because we have many customers and they call support. So we would like to reduce the burden of them. So we do features for them, and there are others.
So they are representatives of each department.
More or less, yes.
Do
Yeah.
they have different ways of working? Because your future customers
Yes.
more important than just look at performance.
Yes, they have different budget to spend on this in this game. It's expressed by different amount of money they can invest in effect.
At the beginning, you said that you have also product managers.
Mhm.
They
So product managers, as I said, typical product manager takes care of multiple products, and he just comes with the new features like for this for in this wish list. Yeah. Okay. If there are no more questions, then thank you, and I will still be here around.